Shalom, shalom to the 12 tribes of Yasharahla all throughout that are scattered to the four corners of the world. I just wanted to come before you all with another video. In today's lesson, we will discuss who is Melchizedek. And I want to discuss Melchizedek because he is like this mystery character of the Bible. And I think that it was made that way intentionally. But Melchizedek he's king. He's mentioned in Hebrews 7, and Christ being king and priest after the order of Melchizedek. Melchizedek was first mentioned in Genesis 14, and we are told that he was the king of Salem as well as the high priest of the Most High. And so that's pretty much all we have. And I remember when I was in Bible school having to write a paper on wondering who Melchizedek is. And based on what's discussed in Hebrews 7, you would think that Melchizedek is Christ, or Christ was Melchizedek reincarnate, or something like that, because it mentions that he has no beginning or end. But we're going to really break down without questions as who Melchizedek is and how important his priesthood is. Okay. So I'm going to start off by reading, going to be reading today from one of my Bibles. This particular one is the Yasharahla scriptures that have had the words that were removed from over the ancient names that were removed from over 10,000 places in the Bible restored. But then I'm also going to read from the Apocrypha. No, I'm going to read from Jasher. I'm going to share Jasher with you online. So let's read Genesis 14 verses 18 through 20. All right, verse 18 reads, and Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought forth bread and wine, and he was the priest of the Most High, Yasharahla. And he blessed him and said, blessed be Abram of the Most High, Yasharahla, possessor of heaven and earth, and blessed be the Most High, Yasharahla, which has delivered thine enemies into thine hand. And he gave him a tenth of all. So Abraham gives Melchizedek a tenth of all. And if we go look, and we read that Melchizedek brought forth wine and bread. So it looks like anytime people brought forth wine and bread, first of all, let's pay attention to what he did. He blessed Abraham, and then they broke bread and had wine together. That was the sign that there was some type of covenant that was going on. Because if you throughout the Bible, anytime someone made a covenant, they typically broke bread and had wine, and that solidified that covenant. Even when our father Isaac made a covenant with his father-in-law Laban, they had bread and wine after he had fled with his wives or whatnot. And even at the Passover, during the Passover, which the Christian church calls the Last Supper, when Yeshua was having his last meal at the Passover, well, he had bread and wine with the disciples, but that was a representation of the covenant of him now becoming the Passover lamb, and us no longer having to physically sacrifice lambs and do everything that we had to do, because he was our sacrifice. So so Abram goes in a covenant here with Melchizedek. Melchizedek blesses him, and he gives Melchizedek a tenth of all the spoils that he had possessed. Now let's go back. What had just taken place was Lot was Sodom and Gomorrah was invaded. Lot was taken captive along with his family, and even the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah, everybody was taken captive. And when someone that escaped got wind to Abraham and told him what went on, Abraham gathered 318 men, and they went and plundered those plundered that army overnight, and slew all of them, and actually was able to free not only Lot and his family but everyone. And so, and then they were able to take the spoils that the army, the kings, had left behind. And that's when, as he was leaving, he walks to Melchizedek, who blesses him. All right. So now we're going to read Hebrews 7, verses 1 through 6. You know what? I'm not going to read this right now. I'm going to share my screen and we'll go into the book of Jasher. All right, so I'm going to start reading. This is chapter 8 of the book of Jasher, and I am going to read as well as share different points with you for the sake of time, because a lot took place. But where was I reading in 8? Okay, so this is the birth of Abram. So if you don't know, Terah, Abraham's father, was Terah, and he actually was a prince, a highly exalted, basically like Nimrod's number one man. He was a prince of Nimrod, and he was captain of Nimrod's army. So I'm going to read Jasher 1 through 4. Chapter 8, verses 1 through 4. And it was in the night that Abram was born that all the servants of Terah and all the wise men of Nimrod and his conjurers came and ate and drank at the house of Terah, for they rejoiced with him on that night. And when all the men and conjurers went out from the house of Terah, they lifted up their eyes towards heaven that night to look on the stars, and they saw and beheld one very large star that came from the east and ran into the heavens, and it swallowed up 4 stars from the 4 sides of heaven. And all the wise men and conjurers were astonished at this sight, and the sages understood this matter, and they knew its import. And they said to each other, this only betokens the child that was born to Terah this night, who will grow up and be fruitful and multiply and possess all the earth, he and his children forever. And he and his seed will slay great kings and inherit their lands. So this is what took place in the sky when on the night that Abraham was born. So now the wise men tell themselves, okay, we can't keep this from Nimrod. If we keep this from Nimrod and he gets wind that we're aware of it, we will be slayed. So the following morning, they all assemble together and they go before King Nimrod and tell him of this great sight that they had seen the night before. And they tell him, you know, this son that Abraham had is going to eventually slay you, and he will be king, and he and his seed will subdue the earth, and you know, and reign. And so Nimrod calls Terah before him, and he asks him, basically, give me your son that I may kill him. And so I will start reading. He asked him to give him, you know, your son that I may kill him. And Terah asked him for 3 days. Like, give me 3 days. You asking me a hard thing here. You're asking me for my son. And so Nimrod, he pressed Nimrod on the issue. He gave him 3 days. So I'm going to read from verse 33 to verse 36. Verse 33 reads, and Terah hastened as the thing was urgent from the king. And he took a child from one of his servants, which was his handmaiden that had been born that day. And Terah brought that child to the king and received value for him. And Ahiah was with Terah in this matter, that Nimrod might not cause Abram's death. And the king took the child from Terah, and with all his might he dashed his head to the ground, for he thought it had been Abram, and he was concealed from him from that day. And it was forgotten by the king, and it was the will of the providence not to suffer Abram's death. And Terah took Abram his son secretly, together with his mother and nurse, and he concealed them in a cave, and he brought them their provisions monthly. And Ahiah was with Abram in the cave, and he grew up, and Abram was in the cave for 10 years. And the king and his princes and soothsayers and sages thought that the king had killed Abram. So this is so we see what had taken place. Nimrod kills Abraham's maidservant's infant, thinking that he killed Abram. Abram had to spend the first 10 years of his life in hiding in a cave in order not to be sought out by Nimrod. So now I'm going to jump to Jasher chapter 9, and read verses 4 through 7. Haran was 42 years old when he begot Sarai, which was in the 10th year of the life of Abram. And in those days, Abram and his mother and nurse went out from the cave, as the king and his subjects had forgotten the affair of Abram. And when Abram came out from the cave, he went to Noah and his son Shem, and he remained with them to learn the instructions of Ahiah and his ways. And no man knew where Abram was. And Abram served Noah and Shem his son for a long time. And Abram was in Noah's house 39 years. And Abram knew Ahiah from 3 years old. And he went in the ways of Ahiah until the day of his death, as Noah and his son Shem had taught him. And all the sons of the earth in those days greatly transgressed against Ahiah, and they rebelled against him, and they served other Elohims, and they forgot Ahiah, who had created them in the earth. And the inhabitants of the earth made unto themselves at that time every man his gods. Every man his powers of wood and stone, which could neither speak, hear, nor deliver. And the sons of men served them, and they became their powers. And the kings and all his servants and Terah with all his household were the first of those that served those powers of wood and stone. So we see that although Abraham was born and anointed by the Most High, and Terah was his father, Abraham has to hide out in the cave for 10 years. And then he goes and sits at the feet of Shem and Noah to learn all about the Most High and his ways. And while his father Terah was serving these idols of wood and stone with under King Nimrod. So let me jump to, all right, so now I'm going to go to Jasher 11, and we're going to read from 13 to 17. And in the 50th year of the life of Abram, the son of Terah, Abram came forth from the house of Noah and went to his father's house. And Abram knew Ahiah, and he went in his ways and instructions. And Ahiah, his Elohim, was with him. And Terah, his father, in those days, still the captain of the host of King Nimrod, and he still followed strange powers. And Abram came to his father's house and saw 12 powers standing there in their temples. And the anger of Abram was kindled when he saw these images in his father's house. And Abram said, as Ahiah lives, these images shall not remain in my father's house. So shall Ahiah, who created me, do unto me, if in 3 days I do not break them all. So Abram stays with Noah and Shem, learning everything about the Most High for 39 years. He returns to his father's house at the age of 50. So really, that was his first time going to his father's house, was at the age of 50. Because from birth to the age of 10, he was in a cave. So he has to go. He returns to his, okay, so let's go ahead and just give you a synopsis of what else had happened. Terah, his father, is very upset at Abram because, like he swore to do, he swore to Ahiah that he was going to do it. And Abram took a hatchet and he hacked all of his father's strange idols to, I was about to say to death, but he hacked them to pieces. And his father was so upset with him and asked him, why did you do this? What happened? And he said, well, I didn't do this. They got into it. One of them, I tried to give one of them an offering. The other one reached their hand out and they got into it. And the father got mad saying, these are idols of wood and stone. I made them with my own hands. How can you say that they were talking, or that all this took place? And then Abraham said, well, why are you serving them? So now, remind you, his father is Nimrod's boy. He goes and tells Nimrod what Abram did, and Abram is called before Nimrod to answer to what he did to his father's idols. So I just want to read. This is so like what Abraham says to Nimrod, and he didn't flinch or had no fear in him. I just want to read that. So Nimrod confronts him and asks him, why did you do this? He tells Nimrod the same story. And then Nimrod says, there is no power in them. They can't do all, that you're saying. They don't have the power to speak or eat, as you said. And so starting at verse 56, no, I start reading at verse 55. Dost thou imagine that they can deliver thee, or can do anything small or great, that thou should serve them? And why wilt thou not sense Elohim of the whole universe, who created thee, and whose power it is to kill and to keep alive? O foolish, simple, ignorant king, woe unto you forever. I thought thou would teach thy servants the upright way, but thou hast not done this, but hast filled the whole earth with thy sins and the sins of thy people who have followed your ways. Why? I'm sorry. Dost thou not know, or hast thou not heard that this evil which thou doest, our ancestors sinned therein in the days of old, and the eternal Elohim brought the waters of the flood upon them and destroyed them all, and also destroyed the whole earth on their account? And wilt thou and thy people rise up now to do this work in order to bring the anger of the Elohim of the universe and to bring evil upon thee and the whole earth? Now put away this evil deed which thou doest, and serve the Elohim of the universe, as thy soul is in his hands, and it will be well with thee. And if your wicked heart will not hearken to my words to cause thee to forsake thy evil ways and serve the eternal Elohim, then wilt thou die in shame in the latter days, thou, thy people, and all that are connected with you, hearing the words and walking in thy evil ways. And when Abraham had ceased from speaking before the king's princes, Abraham lifted up his eyes to heaven and said, O Ahiah, seeth all the wickedness, and he will judge them. So, needless to say, that chapter 11, Nimrod not only orders Abraham to be jailed for 10 days, but he orders him to be thrown in the fiery furnace. Long story short, Abraham is delivered from the fiery furnace, just as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He was in there for 3 days, thrown in there with his brother, Haran. Haran was burnt to death, and Abram was not. And so King Nimrod had no choice but to free him. But then he still has a dream later that he's going to be conquered and overcome by Abram and his seed. So now he's ordering his men to go seize him and go ahead and kill him. So verse 61, Abram hearkened to the voice of Eleazar. Abram hastened and ran for safety to the house of Noah and his son Shem, and he concealed himself there, for he found a safe place, for a place of safety. And the king's servants came to Abram's house to seek him, but they could not find him. They searched through the country, and he was not to be found. So they went and searched in every direction, and he was not to be met with. So now, Eleazar told Abraham, or Abram at the time, what King Nimrod planned to do. And so he once again runs to flee for safety to the house of Noah and Shem, the same place that he had lived for 39 years before even returning to his father's house at the age of 50. So he runs back there. So now we're going to go to Jasher 16, and I have verses 6 through 12 underlined. So this is the same story that had taken place that we read in Genesis 14. This is talking about the kings that had taken Lot captive, and Abraham got wind of it. So I start reading at verse 7. And Abram heard of this, and he rose up with about 318 men that were with him. And he that night pursued the kings and smote them. And they all fell before Abram and his men. And there was none remaining but the 4 kings who fled. And they went each on his own road. And Abram recovered all the property of Sodom, and he also recovered Lot and his property. his wives and his little ones, and all belonging to him, so that Lot lacked nothing. And when he returned from smiting these kings, he and his men passed the valley of Siddim, where the kings had made war together. And Bera, the king of Sodom, and the rest of the men that were with him went out from the lime pits unto which they had fallen to meet Abram and his men. And it says here, I'm not going to say this word because they took the name of the king of the king of the Philippians here, but this is supposed to be Melchizedek. And Melchizedek, the king of Jerusalem, the same with Shem, went out with his men to meet Abram and his people with wine and bread, and they remained together in the valley of Melech. And Melchizedek blessed Abram, and Abram gave him a tenth of all that he had brought from the spoils of his enemies, for Melchizedek was the priest before Elohim. So this is telling us that Shem, the same man that Abraham sat at his feet, learning the ways of righteousness, learning how to walk after Ahiah, Shem was king of Jerusalem, and he was also priest. He was also the priest of Ahiah, of the Most High. So it tells us here that it's Shem. So there's no question about it. So now I'm going to stop sharing for 1 second, and I'm going to read from Hebrews 7 here. Hebrews 7, and I think I'll read verses, 1 through 6. For this, Melchizedek, priest of the Most High, Elohim, who met Abram returning from the slaughter of the kings and blessed him, and whom also Abram gave a tenth part of all, first being an interpretation, the king of righteousness, and after that also the king of Salem, which is the king of peace. Without father, without mother, without descent, having neither beginning of days nor end of life, but made like unto the son of Ahiah, abides a priest continually. Now consider how great this man was, unto whom even the patriarch Abraham gave a tenth of his spoils. And verily, they that are of the sons of Levi, who receive the office of the priesthood, have commandment to take the tithes of the people according to the Torah law, that is, of their brethren, though they came out of the loins of Abraham. But he whose descent is not counted from amongst them received tithes of Abraham and blessed him that he had the promise. So when you're reading this and it's saying without father, without mother, without descent, it makes Melchizedek look like a mystery man that just appears in the earth and does not have an earthly father or mother. But that's actually not what it's saying. The very first verse, verse 2 says that Melchizedek was the king of Salem, and he was which is interpreted the king of righteousness and the king of peace, without father, without mother, without descent, having neither beginning of days nor end of life. That's his office as king of Salem, the office of the Melchizedek priesthood, which was king and priest. That office did not come through his father, nor through his mother, or nor through descent, through lineage. That office was established. It had no beginning of days nor end of life. It was established at the beginning. It was established before the foundation of the world. That office of the Melchizedek priesthood. And that's why Christ, if we go down further, I think around verse 14, it says, "For it is evident that our master sprang out of Judah, of which tribe Moses or Moshe spake nothing concerning the priesthood." So this is the same. Christ came in that Melchizedek priesthood, with that office of Melchizedek, which is king and priest, although he was not a Levite, although he was from the tribe of Judah. So out of all the children that Shem had, Abraham was the one chosen to walk in that same office of the Melchizedek priesthood, that it would come to him, and then it came to our father Judah, and then it went to it was anointed over Judah that it would come from him, and then it went, to Christ. And so that is, so I just want to, like, for me, that took everything to a whole nother level, knowing that we, the children of it's one thing to be a part of being the 12 tribes, but to be from the tribe of Judah, the tribe that was chosen to carry the Melchizedek priesthood, it's even bigger. Melchizedek, we have to walk upright. That's another thing. Our father Yaakov, his name was not changed to Jacob. His name was Yashar or Jasher. That was his name. Jacob, Jasher or Yashar means to walk upright. So we are supposed to be the light of the earth, the ones that were called to walk upright before or in the midst of all the wickedness that is going on, like our father Abraham. And so we have become, through the curses, we have become the face of everything unrighteous. They flipped it and made the children of light the face of the face of darkness, the face of every abomination or abominable thing. We're the face of drug dealing. We're the face of crime. We're the face of prostitution. We're the face of this LGBTQ. They show our men in the dresses with the wigs and the hair and the purses and stuff like that. We're the face of just wickedness. But we're called to walk upright. We're called to love Ahaya, our Elohim, with our whole heart, whole mind, whole soul. That's the only way that we're going to assist the kingdom. Other than that, if we have any wickedness in us, we will perish before him. Just like the old priests used to do when they would go into the Holy of Holies and have the rope around their waist. Because if anything unclean was found on them, they would drop dead and have to be pulled out by that rope. And so we are not getting in the kingdom with any sin in us. We have to make sure that we are perfect, that we are holy, that we are repenting, and we are found clean before him. All of this, everybody's going one size fit all, sin is sin, and he love everybody. You're deceived. And then if you believe that you're following him, but you are not participating in his holy days or even reverencing them, but you are participating in the world's holy days. Those are holy days. They call them holy days. They dropped the Y and added an I, but those are holy days, the holy days of the world, which is the holy days of the prince of the power of this world. And so that's who you're following. If you have, you're following all those major holidays and have trees erected on the winter solstice and stuff like that, you are actually reverencing his enemy and not him. But anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and end this video. I pray that you all have a blessed week. I do plan to get a few other videos out. I don't know how soon. I'll try to get back to making a video a week or two, but all a highest timing and his will. So I pray that you all are blessed and you have a wonderful week. And until the next video, I'll talk to you soon.